Mic check. Mic check. Mic check. Microphone check. Mic 4. And mic 5. And mic 5.
Yeah, let me just hold. So I'll open here, do the introductions, and then come down there with my questions.
And then you just
No, but I go to Hillsdale.
Oh, I see. So red isn't on.
red stop.
And you're going to be sitting right there and hand it to me, or you want me to keep it here?
Do whatever you want.
Well, I keep it here. Yeah. If I forget it, you can remind me. Yeah. I can hand you my questions. My Hillary Clinton act. Yeah. It's funny. Miss Stone. Good. How are you? Oh my gosh.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the Heritage Foundation and our Lewis Lehrman Auditorium. We, of course, welcome those who join us on our heritage.org website on all of these occasions. For our in-house guests, we would make that last reminder to see that our mobile devices have been silenced or turned off as a courtesy. And of course, those watching online are welcome at any time to send their questions simply emailing speaker@heritage.org. And we will, of course, post today's program on the Heritage homepage for everyone's future reference. Leading our discussion and welcoming our special guests is Becky Norton Dunlop, our Ronald Reagan Distinguished Fellow. She has been a conservative movement leader since first coming to Washington. She has served as chairman of the Center Conservative Action Project. She advocates on behalf of Heritage's American Conservative Ethic. She advances energy and natural resources policy. and serves as an active board member on many public policy organizations and associations. She previously served us here at Heritage as Vice President for External Relations and most recently led the Restore America project. Prior to joining Heritage in 1998, she served in the cabinet of Governor George Allen of Virginia, and before that, she served throughout the Reagan administration with appointments at the Department of Interior, the Department of Justice, as well as 4 years working for the President at the White House. Please join me in welcoming Becky Norton Dunlop.
Thank you, John. Doesn't John do a great job of opening these heritage programs? Let's give him a hand. Well, let me say, first of all, on behalf of the president of the Heritage Foundation, Mrs. Kay Coles James, I welcome you. And of course, our board and staff, we're all delighted to have you here. The Heritage Foundation, for those of you who might not be aware, I know these distinguished guests are aware, is a conservative research and education foundation. And our core principles are free enterprise, limited constitutional government, individual freedom, traditional values, and a strong national defense. As conservatives, we value individuals. And we're delighted today to actually be together to celebrate women as individuals and valuable individuals. And we want to celebrate their accomplishments and their opportunities. So I'm going to introduce our guests, and then they're each going to have an opening statement. And they're limited in time, but we don't have bells, whistles, or lights, so. I'm going to begin at this end with Cathy McMorris Rodgers, Representative Cathy McMorris Rodgers. She hails from the state of Washington, which, as you know, is the other Washington in this country. And it's greener and more verdant and has great orchards.
Better Washington.
You can say that. In any event, she worked in her family orchards when she was growing up, and as her first beginning as a career. And then she was elected to the Washington State Legislature. And I actually first met her when she was a state legislator. And everybody talked about Cathy McMorris was a rising star. And boy, were they right. She subsequently has become Cathy McMorris Rodgers and is a mom of 3 youngsters. But she was elected to the Congress in 2005, and she was a leader when she was elected, and she's continued to be a leader in the United States Congress. We're going to be delighted to hear from her. Our second speaker, and I'm going to do this out of order because I'm doing this differently than John does, is Representative Martha Roby. And Martha Roby is from Alabama. So we're going from Washington State to Alabama. She is an attorney. We will not hold that against her. But we are delighted that she not only engaged in private practice, but she also served on the city council of Montgomery, Alabama. You know, it's great when people come to Washington, D.C. to serve in Congress who've had the experience of serving in local government. It tempers their view about all the things that the national government wants to do that they shouldn't do. She was elected to Congress in 2011, and we're delighted to have her here with us today. Our third presenter will be Representative Ann Wagner. She's on the end, and she is a representative from the state of Missouri, the Show Me State. Got that right, huh?
Missouri, yeah, Midwest.
She was a businesswoman before she became a member of Congress, but she also was very active in a political party, and that happened to be the Republican Party. And she was very successful in her work there. And a president of the United States, who happened to be a Republican president, nominated her to be the United States ambassador to Luxembourg. And that was President George Bush. And so she served as a diplomat. So she's got experience in business, running helping to run a political party and then as a diplomat. And then she came back and ran for Congress and was elected in 2013. And we're delighted to have her here on our platform. Last but not least is the most junior of the ladies on the stage, and that's Representative Mia Love from the great state of Utah. She was born in New York, but she went west, young lady, go west, and ended up in Utah, where she also was very active on the local level. She served on the city council and then was elected mayor of Saratoga Springs. And you know, when you're in local government, that's where the rubber meets the road. Every citizen has access to you. They can come knock on your door every day and say, I've got a pothole out front. And so you really learn, you really learn to have the heartbeat of the citizens when you serve in local government. And she was very successful as a mayor, and then she decided to run for Congress and was elected in 2015. So we have 4 very distinguished Republican members, conservative members of the House of Representatives here today, helping us celebrate women, their empowerment, and the opportunities that some of the new legislation that's been passed does to help that. So we're going to begin. You actually can make your statements from your seats if you'd like to, and we'll just go down the row as opposed to in the order in which I introduce you. Over to you,
Okay.
Chairman.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Becky. It's great to be at Heritage today to celebrate Women's History Month, celebrate many trailblazing women, and I'm especially proud to be here with my colleagues that are on the roster with me. They are some dynamic, amazing women that I have the privilege of serving with in Congress. One thing we often hear about are the women's issues. I think everyone on this panel is going to suggest to you that all issues are women's issues. And the work that we do day in and day out is so important to everyone in the country, men, women, and children. Women care about defense, finance, healthcare, and everything in between. And it's really the conservatives that are moving forward the policies that are going to empower women as well as everyone else. So during Women's History Month, it's fun to be able to celebrate and recognize some of the trailblazers that have gone before us. People like Susan B. Anthony, who was a trailblazing woman, a pro-life Republican woman who was one of the spear leaders in making sure that women had the right to vote. Women like Jeannette Rankin, who was the first woman ever to serve in Congress, a Republican from Montana. It's also great to be able to celebrate Kay Cole James as the new president of Heritage. And, you know, I've heard Kay say that the Heritage Board chose her because she was the most qualified for the job. It was not in their DNA to choose her because she was an African-American woman. It was about her experience, it was about her qualities, and I'm really excited to see her leadership at Heritage. So today you're hearing from women from coast to coast. I'm proud to serve currently as the chair of the Republican Conference and work on many policies that are about promoting people and empowering people all across this country. You know, for some, it's the importance of getting rid of the red tape that often stifles innovation and next generation thinking. Move ahead more choices in healthcare. Provide tools for education choice and opportunity. Protect the dignity of life. Provide tax relief. It's a long list, but I am proud of the fact that this Congress has addressed all of those issues and more. We are about putting power back into the hands of individuals, back into the hands of the American people, not keeping those decisions here in Washington, D.C. And because all issues are women's issues, we need to be writing policies that reflect us and our policies. One example that I wanted to share with you was in the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act that recently passed. And one of the provisions in that bill is an elimination of the corporate alternative minimum tax. And because of that provision now, Premera Blue Cross in Washington State just this week announced that they are dedicating $40 million to reinvest in communities across Washington State. This includes $1 million to the Hope House. Now, the Hope House happens to be a women's shelter in Spokane. And I recently visited this shelter, and I met some of these women that are so grateful to have a roof over their heads, and hopefully, you know, they want a different life, a better life. But they also impressed upon me that every day they're turning women away. They are so excited to have this $1 million. Now, let me ask, because they have plans for a tripling of their capacity. Now, let me ask you, who would you trust more to make the difference for your neighbors in need? Like the women at Hope House. Would you trust the government bureaucrats here in Washington, D.C., who often just look at these challenges as numbers on a piece of paper? Or would you trust the people in Spokane that are on the ground that are meeting them every day? Now, the answer is pretty obvious. $40 million in the hands of real people in our communities is going to go a lot further than if we would have kept that here in Washington, D.C. And this is just one example of how conservative principles and conservative values are the ones that promote freedom, opportunity, and that limited federal government is the one that's going to result in an opportunity for a better life. And there's other provisions within the tax bill. I know you've heard many of these, but the doubling of the child tax credit, the preservation of the adoption tax credit, the expanded 529 accounts that include K-12 education for those families that want to invest in education themselves. For moms like myself that are raising a son with disabilities, the able to work provision that will now allow a child with disabilities who has a 529 account to go explore work, go see what's out there, maybe get an internship or a part-time job and put that money into their ABLE account so it doesn't jeopardize their benefits. It's going to lead to an opportunity for a better life. So there's a lot that's been done, but the work continues. I so appreciate Heritage and the opportunity to be here today and look forward to answering your questions. Thank you very much.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here and speak with you today. I'd like to thank Heritage for the work that they do on behalf of the citizens in this great country. I'd also like to just take a moment to thank these women that are sitting beside me. I mean, you hear about their backgrounds, you hear about, you know, some of the policies, but these are some of the most brave people that I've ever worked with. And I mean that wholeheartedly. I knew them. I can tell you this right now. I knew them before I came here because they were out helping me. Every single one of these ladies were out helping me and recruiting more women, more conservative women. And I wouldn't be here if it weren't for them. The other thing I'd like to point out is that you rarely hear about conservative women getting involved in trouble in Washington because we're too busy. We've got children we have to raise. And we have to make every moment away from our families count. So we're too busy trying to actually get things done. And so I just wanted to say thank you because I have been blessed to be working with these women, and they've been such a great example to me. A little bit about me. Yes, I was born in New York, raised in Connecticut. I've lived my entire adult life in the great state of Utah. Why did I move there? Because I happen to like freedom. I wanted to raise my kids in a place where I could actually raise them and I could be more of an influence in their lives. I have to tell you, the background that I have, I will never give up where I grew up and the foundation that my parents instilled in me. They immigrated from Haiti. They were under major dictatorship in Haiti under Papa Doc and Baby Doc. And so history would tell them something that's different than if they were to have been here for the past 20 years, or I shouldn't say 20 years, sorry, 50 years. They knew what they were coming to. They wanted a land, they wanted to be in the land of opportunity, a land of freedom, a place where they could work and raise their children. And only in this country would they be able to give their children a little bit more than they received. My parents, my dad was relentless in teaching me lessons. As a matter of fact, anytime I wanted to purchase something or get something, he would tell me that I wasn't entitled to anything I didn't own, earn, work for, or pay for myself. And he would make me write an essay as to why I needed it. And after I was done with the essay, he would say, okay, great, let's go find a way to get you to pay for half of it. Of course, I thought he was being completely unfair because my father was pretty much just teaching me a lesson. I thought that, you know, that's what dads do. They just give their kids stuff, especially their youngest child. I was supposed to be the favorite. But my dad did teach me. It's really interesting. My dad taught me the value of working hard for something. And when I had some sort of skin in the game, first of all, I knew that I could reach goals. Second of all, I would take care of something that I worked for, and that's something that's led me to where I am today. The other thing I want to say, I want to just give you one more experience so you know where this background comes from and the influence that my parents had in my life. They knew about this great America and the conservative policies that have made us the country that we are today. We didn't get anything. We don't have this country by having things come easy to us. The reason why we're such a great country is because we have been able to. We realize the value of freedom, and we're willing as people to stand up and fight for it. And freedom is fragile. It's always threatened, whether it's within our boundaries or outside of our boundaries. And as Lincoln would say, rest is not for the living. It's worth fighting for. You have to make sure that if you're alive, you're still fighting. I got the opportunity to go to the University of Chicago. Everyone told me not to go. They said, look, this is Barack Obama territory. They're going to hate you. And I went to speak to some aspiring students there and told them about my background and told them about my life. And one young lady stood up and she said, I don't get it. You are a Black, female, Republican, Mormon, living in Utah in today's America. What's wrong with you? And I said, I am all of those things because I refuse to fit into this mold that society tells me that I'm going to fit into. Imagine if people like Martin Luther King, and some people didn't fight for your ability to believe in the things that you believe in. Imagine if we just decided to let government say that you were a second-class citizen. We wouldn't be here today. So I'm not asking you to believe in the things I believe in. What I'm asking you to do is to preserve your right and your ability to think for yourself, to preserve your ability to be the master of your own home and make decisions. Because when we do make those decisions, by the way, failure is not final. My parents failed many, many times, and they got back up, and they learned from them, and it made them stronger. But we make choices, and sometimes we suffer the consequences, but then sometimes we reap the benefits. And we wouldn't be here as a country if we didn't reap those benefits. So that's why I believe in the things I believe in. That's what drove the policies as a mayor. Our city is doing well. And they weren't doing well for the next 4 or 5 years until the next election cycle. We made decisions to make sure that the city would thrive for the next 40, 50, 60 years and beyond. And that's what we're doing for our country. And we're doing it not for ourselves. We're doing it on the behalf of our children and the people that are going to be growing up and inheriting this great country. So thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to having this conversation with my colleagues.
Well, let me start by saying thank you to our fearless leader, Kathy McMorris Rogers, for sending me an email and inviting me to join you and my colleagues on stage today. Thank you to the Heritage Foundation for putting this on. I, too, am so blessed and thankful to get the opportunity to serve my country alongside these amazing women. And I will tell you that there are long, hard days here, and to have like-minded individuals that we can lean on each other and encourage each other throughout these processes. I'm really thankful for not just to serve with them, but to call each of these ladies my friends. And so it's a privilege to be here with you today. Just real quickly, currently my hats are very diverse. I'm an appropriator. I serve on the Appropriations Committee, and as you know, each of us serve on 3 subcommittees. National security has been a very important part of the work that I've done here in Congress. I started out on the House Armed Services Committee and the Committee on Agriculture, and then 4 years ago moved over to Appropriations, thinking I was going to have to be here for a very, very long time to end up on the Subcommittee on Defense. But fortunately, my chairman gave me the opportunity this Congress to serve on the Defense Subcommittee. I also serve on Labor, HHS, and then Commerce, Justice, and Science. But around here, if you ask for something and you get it, you sometimes get a bonus prize. So I got a phone call from Kevin McCarthy at the beginning of this Congress after I received my subcommittee assignments on appropriations saying, congratulations, you've just been granted a waiver to serve on the Judiciary Committee. And so that is a new role for me. I'm very grateful to be there. I asked to serve on the Crime Subcommittee because of work that I'm interested in doing on sex and human trafficking. I agree with Kathy. All issues are important to women. Many times as we get together with our male colleagues, we're there to remind them that we have a tremendous talent pool in our conference of individuals that come from all backgrounds and all walks of life. We all have issues that we're interested in focusing on, but at the end of the day, we care about the same things as our male counterparts do, is conservative Republicans, in making sure that we're pushing policy that is helpful to the American people. I was told in my introduction I was to talk about something that I've worked on related to families, and obviously in celebration of this month. And so I wanted to talk to you for a minute on a bill that Kathy gave to me several Congresses ago that we've actually passed this Congress. You know, we can legislate a lot of things as members of Congress, but one thing we can't legislate is another hour in the day. And as working moms, and as all of you in this room, you have the challenge of work-life balance. For men and women, time management is always the most difficult thing that we have to deal with in our lives, making sure that we are being good stewards to our spouses and our children, and making sure that we're investing in the time that we spend with them, but also the balance of our work and the important role that we play here as members of Congress. So this bill that Kathy handed to me is called the Working Families Flexibility Act. In the public sector currently, employees have the option of converting their overtime pay to paid time off or compensatory time. So for a lot of folks, you know, if you want to coach your child's soccer team, or you want to take a mission trip in the summer, and your work is such that you compile overtime hours, and you'd rather use that time for paid leave instead of cash payments for overtime. If you work in the public sector, you can currently do this. But the Fair Labor Standards Act does not allow for those working in the private sector to enjoy that same benefit. And so this Working Families Flexibility Act, again, it's passed the House. Again, this Congress, we're hopeful that the Senate will take a look at it. It does just that. It allows for employees in a voluntary agreement with their employer. Only if the employer chooses. There's no mandates here. This is completely voluntary. If an employer wants to offer this as a benefit to their workforce, then the employee, it's left solely up to the employee to enter into that voluntary agreement, which they can cancel, cash out is the term in the bill, at any time. This is about making life work. If you remember several Congresses ago, there was an initiative of how can we have big issues in this country, right? We have our national debt. We have our national security issues. We have big issues like illegal immigration and all these things that we've taken on. We've accomplished Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, but we still have a lot left to do. But in the meantime, this was about what are some simplistic things that we can do here in the Congress to help working families all across America. And the Working Families Flexibility was about just that. And of course, we received a statement from the White House in support of this, which is always helpful. And so we're continuing to wait for the Senate as we are on a lot of things, to get things done. I talk at home about we've passed so many great conservative bills in the House of Representatives that are way too important to go to the Senate to die. And so we continue to push our Senate colleagues to take up some of these measures. But that's just, again, one example of the things that we're doing here, and not just for women, for working moms and dads, just to make life work a little bit better. So again, thank you. I am a mom. I have a little girl, not so little anymore. Margaret is about to turn 13, and her brother George is 9. George is actually here in Washington with me, talk about making life work. Mom and Dad both do work. So when we have spring break, sometimes I bring one or both of my kids up here. So I'm sorry, George, I told him I was coming to speak on a panel and he just wasn't interested. So otherwise I would have introduced you to him. But again, thank you for having me here today. It's a real joy and privilege, and we look forward to a good discussion with each of you.
All right, I think I'm batting clean up here. I'm Ann Wagner. I am from the heartland of our country. I represent Missouri's 2nd Congressional District, which is basically that my district looks like me. Suburban women, middle-aged women. That's what I represent. And I've had quite a journey. I was asked to talk a little bit about my story and how I got here as a conservative woman leader. I'm not supposed to be here. I was going to be a Broadway star. I'm going to tell you that right now. I am the oldest of 3 children. My parents had little carpet stores out in West St. Louis County. I worked at those stores from the age of 12 on. And I had it in my mind that I was going to Broadway and going to sing for the rest of my life. And my daddy told me I was going to Mizzou. I was getting a business degree, and I was going to be a good, strong, practical woman that he'd raised that could take care of herself and others along the way. I did whatever my father said. We kind of split the difference. I went to Mizzou. I got that business degree, but I sang my way through on a vocal music performance scholarship. So yeah, I can tell a little insight here since we're about the journey. But my parents, as Mia Love talked about, also they informed me and who I am and what I did. And working in a family, small-owned business, I listened to my father every single day of my life, pound a table or a desk or countertop, and say all he wanted was the government out of his way and off his back, so that he could provide goods and services to his community, he could take care of his employees and provide for his family. And he did it in that order. So I went then on to get a business degree, sang my way through. I only sing at church anymore, but went and worked for 2 fantastic companies, Hallmark Cards in Kansas City, Missouri, and then Ralston Purina in St. Louis, Missouri, and got married. I've been married now for 31 years to a wonderful man, wonderful long-suffering husband. I think all of our husbands are long-suffering, and have been so supportive of the work that we do. But he actually took a job when John Ashcroft was 2nd-term governor in Missouri. We moved to Jefferson City. A couple things to do in a capital town. You either do government work or you do politics. And I jumped in and started to take the helm at the Republican Party. I ran as a grassroots township committee woman, served at that lowest level of party politics for 9 years, went on to be the first and only woman to ever chair the Missouri Republican Party. We had some great gains during that time, went on to co-chair the National Party for 4 years, traveled to 48 states on behalf of our party, and started a program called Winning Women. That was to empower and to grow women candidates for the future. I believe in that call and am active in that arena still to this day. Then answered another call. The President of the United States, after his election, George W. Bush, in December of 2004, said, all right, Annie girls, what do you call me? He said, you've got this way of moving the wheelbarrow forward, keeping all the frogs in the barrel and moving it forward. You're a great communicator. I think you're a diplomat. And I thought, good heavens, where is this going? And the next thing I know, he says, I need you to go to Western Europe to be the face and the voice of America, and you need to bring your kids. And I did. And what an adventure and a journey that was for 4 years in the heart of Western Europe. came back, decided, you know what, it's time for me to put my own name on the yard sign. I've been electing and promoting so many others for so many years, did so, and was elected to Congress in 2003. And, you know, my message, I think, to women, especially many of you young women in the audience, is step out of your comfort zone. Get outside the box. Look at the crazy things I've done. I was going to be a Broadway star. Then I turned into, you know, working in the corporate community, small business, chairing a party, co-chairing a national party, a U.S. ambassador to Congress. You know, think big. Think outside the box. Follow your heart. Follow your values. Live your values, and answer that call. So many times we want to stay in that comfort zone and not step out. And it affords you opportunities to learn and to grow and to touch the lives of others. I believe we are all here, all my other three wonderful colleagues here, we all are here to serve on earth, to serve a cause greater than oneself, and to give voice to the voiceless. And that's what we do. That's what we do as women, and we do it great. We are great communicators. We are the doers in this world. We are the ones that get things done. Don't take no for an answer. We are the ones that keep that wheelbarrow moving forward. And we're juggling the egg, the bowling ball, and the chainsaw when the cell phone rings. That's who we are. We are the deciders of every election. We're the majority out there, so we decide who our elected servants are across this country. We have all the purchasing power. We make most of the household purchasing and budgeting decisions in this country. We are the largest number of women of postgraduate education and degrees out there. The largest sector that is starting small businesses are women-owned businesses. The world is your oyster. I mean, you have such an opportunity to move forward and to make a difference in this world. And I think that we are all called to do that, to step out of our comfort zone and work on these kinds of initiatives. As a member of Congress, it's because the past informs me, and I have a business degree, so I had the privilege of going and getting on the Financial Services Committee in Luxembourg, where I was ambassador. I worked in the fund industry and banking and finance, so it was a good segue for me. I hold a gavel on that committee in oversight and investigation, and we're working a lot on regulatory reform. We're pleased to be taking up soon the Senate package of Dodd-Frank repeal and replace that we've already passed in the House. Their version of it should be coming over to the House floor here soon, I hope. I was actually, as a U.S. ambassador, introduced to the issue of human trafficking, and then realized that this is not something that just happens in other countries. After I returned home, it's hiding in plain sight right here in our own cul-de-sacs, in our own neighborhoods, in our own faith communities, and have taken up that cause. And right now, as we speak, H.R. 1865 that Martha and all my colleagues have helped me on, called FOSTA, Fight Online Sex Trafficking Act, is on the floor in the Senate. So we passed it in the House. It's on the floor in the Senate right now, and we're moving that package on that is going to do away with modern-day sex slavery, I hope, especially as we've watched this move from the streets to the internet. This online predators like Backpage.com and others are horrific. So that has been a part of my work. I serve on the Foreign Affairs Committee also, and obviously as a former U.S. ambassador, I almost went on the Western Europe subcommittee, but decided instead to branch out and Asia Pacific and on the Middle East too. So being able to fight for peace on the Korean Peninsula is important to all of you. Safety, security, whether it's your economic security, women care deeply about that, their own personal safety and security, that of their families. All these issues are important. All issues are women's issues. And I just am thrilled to be here again with my colleagues and with all of you. I thank Heritage so much. Becky, thank you for moderating, and I look forward to the rest of our dialogue.
Well, that was terrific. I'm going to step down here so that I can look at you when I ask you these questions. You covered a lot of territory. Wasn't that fantastic? Well, let me. I'm going to go to each one of you and ask the question now here that we've had submitted from people who are concerned. Representative McMorris Rogers, you talked about the tax cut bill that you were deeply involved. Can you identify, I mean, you covered a lot of territory, but can you identify maybe 2 or 3 areas where you were hearing from particularly women business owners or family farm folks about issues that they were concerned about that you wanted to make sure got dealt with in this bill so that they would have the opportunity to have great economic growth?
Absolutely. We did a tour around the tax reform bill before it was passed. We went around to different states. We ended up going to Virginia, Michigan, North Carolina, and it was interesting hearing from small business owners. We went up to Pennsylvania. Small business owners and family farmers especially, they would talk about wanting to pay their employees more, wanting to give higher benefits to their employees, but as a small business owner, they just felt because of the tax burden and because of healthcare costs, it was not possible. And you could hear in their voices that they were very frustrated because they wanted to do more for their employees. And as this bill has been passed now and is being implemented, I've heard from so many who are saying that and you've heard the stories too, but they're investing in their employees, whether it's the bonuses that they've been able to give or those that are expanding benefits, but also, you know, there's a lady back home who she said, I'm tearing out that wall. We're expanding. We're planning some more locations. It's given some optimism to people that was really needed. I think for several years now, it had been almost a hunker down mode, just trying to get through, trying to survive. And the optimism, the hope is what is most exciting to me, and that we can keep that going, and that people, women, everyone will start dreaming again about what's possible and move from what was more survival mode to now a dream mode.
Well, thank you very much. Now I'm going to move to Representative Roby. First of all, let me say I'm glad you're a lawyer. And I bet you watch the Supreme Court very closely, and you must be very, very happy with the latest appointment to the court. My question to you, though, really is about an issue that we hear often concerns women in America, and that is safety and security. Tell us a little bit about your perspective on how legislation that you're dealing with, both in terms of military and homeland security, you think empowers women to actually be more free and confident in the safety in their community?
It was a great question, and let me say we know that women care about national security. It's in our DNA as caregivers, as mama bears, if you want to say, to be concerned every day about the safety of our families and our communities. And certainly it's not lost on anyone in this room that it's a very dangerous world. There's a lot going on. One of the things that's been very concerning, I'm now in my 8th year, but even over these 8 years, is the lack of certainty for our men and women who wear the uniform and the decision makers over at the Pentagon in being able to plan for not only what we know, but what what may happen down the road. You know, we often say it's not if, but when. One of the greatest privileges that I have serving the 2nd District of Alabama in the United States Congress is fighting for our men and women who wear the uniform, making sure that they have everything that they need when we send them into harm's way. And I will tell you that we are in a much better position today than we have been as it relates to being able to provide that type of certainty to the decision makers at the Pentagon, and for our men and women to be well-equipped, well-trained when we send them out into the world, and protecting our homeland. So again, as I mentioned in my opening statement, I was very pleased to have the opportunity to sit with Chairwoman Kay Granger on the Subcommittee on Defense and have the seat at the table. I have a large military footprint in my district, but the state of Alabama as well. I represent Maxwell Air Force Base, as well as Fort Rucker, which is the home of Army Aviation. And we have a lot of assets from the top of our state to the bottom. But for you who are concerned about our national security, we often use President Reagan's term, peace through strength, but we also are hearing from our new secretary when we talk about threats, we are the threat. And we need to continue to build our military so that the people of the citizens of the United States of America are safe and are secure, but feel that when they lay their head down at night. And so I just want to encourage you, we now have the ability for the next 2 years to plan with funding for our military. We have a defense number that is where we need to be to ensure the safety and security of Americans both home and abroad. And again, I count it a great privilege. For those of you who represent military families here in this room, let me just say a deep heart thank you for myself and my colleagues here for your service and sacrifice and those of your loved ones. It's really an honor to get to serve on that committee and continue to fight for that.
Let me just ask a quick follow-up here. The Strategic Defense Initiative that President Reagan started was designed so we could stop incoming rogue missiles or enemy missiles. And then we've had subsequent presidents, some of whom have actually cut the funding for that area. What's going on in that area now? We know we have some people out across the world who don't like us very much, who might have control, have their finger on a button of a missile. What's the status of SDI these days?
Well, I'll just tell you, if you look in our defense bill that we just put forward in the appropriations process, there's clearly a very strong number there for our missile defense systems. I'm proud that the THAAD missile system that we currently have deployed in the Korean Peninsula, it's made right in my district. And so the men and women of Alabama's 2nd District certainly have skin in the game. But we are prioritizing our missile defense systems in light of the threats that we see, but also planning down the road for the threats that have not yet happened. Again, I like the term "we are the threat." So we've got to continue to make sure that those funding streams are there and that we're efficient and that we're holding the Pentagon accountable for how those dollars are spent at the same time. And I believe in Secretary Mattis, we have a leader who truly wants to be held accountable, whether it's missile defense systems, whether it's airplanes or helicopters. They want to be held accountable by those of us in Congress that serve on these committees to defend our country. And that's a refreshing place to be. So I want you all to feel confidence that we are moving in the right direction for the protection and safety of our country, both here and abroad.
Thank you. Representative Wagner, you talked about FOSTA. Yes. But you know, I think there are a lot of young women and probably young men, both in this audience and watching us, who really were surprised when you talked about the fact that sex trafficking happens in the United States and actually in Western Europe. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about exactly what it is you're talking about and what the threat is for our particularly young people, although they're not all young who are trafficked, but particularly for young people and what we should be watching for.
Well, I appreciate the question, and it is an issue that I'm very passionate about, and it was an issue that I was introduced to when I served as a U.S. ambassador. And what I would see in Western Europe, and as a member of the State Department, I would have to do the TIP report, Trafficking in Persons report. So this was my introduction to this. I was watching young girls and women and men brought in basically from Eastern Europe into Western Europe to be trafficked, both in labor and sex trafficking issues. You know, then fast forward, I'm home 4 years later, and I do realize I've got a young daughter who I came back. She was a teenager. Now she's 23 years old, but she had brought it to my attention. How, again, it is in every neighborhood, every faith community. This has moved so much from the streets to an online situation, and it's something that is really, I think, tantamount to common or kind of the modern day sex slavery is what I would call it. And it's especially happening among our youth. The Center for Missing and Exploited Children has said they've seen an 846% explosion in the last 5 years in online sex trafficking among children. So something needed to be done. And we are excited about FOSTA. As I said, it's moving through the Senate. This is a piece of legislation that I have worked on probably for 5 years that I've been here, but very intensely over the last 2 years. It's got a very strong criminal component. We've worked with the district attorneys, 50 attorneys general, prosecutors across and law enforcement across our country to give them the most number of tools and resources in order to go after and prosecute and put behind bars and shut down these nefarious websites that are preying upon our women, children, and young men. So they're going to be able to go after it from a criminal standpoint using both the sex trafficking statutes and prostitution statutes. Then it has a civil component to it that also allows for justice and for the survivors and the victims of sex trafficking. And then thirdly, we had to clarify congressional intent when it came to something called the Communications Decency Act. The CDA was a piece of legislation that moved in 1996, kind of prior to the internet, and it was never intended, even back in 1996, when Senator Exxon put this legislation forward, for the internet to become a red light district. Never. But it has. It absolutely has. And these websites have been hiding behind the immunity clauses within the Communications Decency Act and been getting off the hook. Backpage.com and hundreds of other websites that have moved into this space. So the courts have basically said, we don't want to keep siding with these nefarious websites, but you've got to make congressional intent clear. So we went in very surgically and amended the Communications Decency Act, making sure that we took care of people's freedom of speech and the freedom of the internet, but made sure that any crime that is committed offline, if it's a crime offline, guess what? It can't be a crime online and be okay. So we have clarified congressional intent. It's a big piece of legislation, and I'm thrilled that it's going to make its way through the Senate. We were at the White House on Monday with Ivanka Trump and other legislators and advocates and groups that are a part of our team, and I think it'll be signed by the president. I believe this legislation is going to save lives and to make a real difference. And I know that when it was on the floor, my colleague Martha Roby handled the floor time on this. This has been a team effort. Kathy McMorris Rogers, our conference chair, spoke on the measure. I represent an area, St. Louis suburbs. St. Louis is sadly among the top 20 cities for human sex trafficking. So you can't solve all of society's ills through legislation. It takes education and awareness and a lot of other people on the outside in the private sector pulling together. But this is a piece of legislation that's important, and I'm thrilled that we're gonna get signed by the president, I hope soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Love, I've got a couple questions for you, and boy, they're really kind of far apart in topic. One is Utah has a lot of federal land. Tell us about what are monuments, and why did the last president feel so comfortable taking so much of Utah's land away from the use of the people?
Over 64% of the lands that are in Utah are federal lands. And there was a promise that those lands would be returned back to the state, and that promise has never happened. I have to say that my colleague Rob Bishop has been steadfast and incredibly insistent on making sure that Utah had some of those lands preserved. There are two things I want to talk about, and I should say return back to Utah. But there are two things I want to talk about when it comes to lands. First of all, Utahns believe that there should be places for everything. We believe that there should be preservations for wilderness. We believe that there should be places for monuments, national parks, places where we can enjoy. The thing that I love the most about Utah, I don't know if any of you have been there, the beauties of the landscapes is absolutely stunning. I started running years ago when I moved to Utah because I just wanted to enjoy it. And like I said, I've really enjoyed it. I've been able to experience life through the trails in Utah, and the quality of life is incredibly important to Utahns. The other thing so there's this thought and this belief that I believe Utahns can make the best decision for Utah lands. We live there. We want to be able to preserve the quality of life and enjoy those lands and welcome people to come into our state and enjoy them. So there should be a place for everything. And I think that the people that should be making those decisions are Utahns. The other thing I want to say is that this is one of the reasons why it's so incredibly important to make sure we're not consolidating all of the power to the White House. Because understand that whether you like a person that's there or do not like a person that's there, when we give our power away, that could be reversed on us. There's an old saying that what was meant to be used as a shield can be used as a sword or shall not be used as a sword. And this was a prime example. The previous administration didn't even step foot in the state of Utah, made a decision to take quite a bit of Utah lands and say, hey, by the way, no one can have access to those lands anymore. We're going to preserve it as monuments. And the people that were really upset were the Native Americans that were living on that land. They were actually gathering wood from that land. Those are places where they would talk about their ancestry. It was part of the culture. And so it was really upsetting to them that somebody that was way across the country can sit at their desk and make a decision, and where that decision really should have involved Utahns. And of course, you get the other side that's upset when another president comes in and says, hey, by the way, these are the decisions I'm going to make. So that's why I always say, be careful how much power you consolidate into the White House, because someone can giveth and then the other person can taketh away. And again, this is to me about preserving Article 1 of the Constitution, making sure that we, as legislators, are the ones that are making decisions. I believe the branch of government that's closest to people is the House of Representatives. We are in our districts all the time talking about all of these policies actually come from our districts. The experiences that brought Ann Wagner to human and sex trafficking is her experiences abroad, but mostly her experiences in her area. Right? And the same thing, the military bases that are in Alabama and the issues that our chairmen are dealing with in her area. So we're the branch of government that's closest to people. And I think it's important for us to make sure we are preserving Article 1 of the Constitution in the legislative branch and restricting the White House to Article 2. And this is always just a broad issue for me, because wherever you are on the political spectrum, wherever you are, this is about preserving your ability to have a voice. And when you're able to do that and you're following the Constitution, preserving the Constitution, you're really preserving your voice. So.
Well, great. We'll have you come back and give a lecture just on that. My second question for you is, you have received the Defender of Life Award. That's pretty impressive. Can you talk a little bit about why the lives of infants matter and how it affects women, the family, and our society?
Okay. So first of all, I am unapologetically a pro-life mother, pro-life American. I believe that it is our job to preserve life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, first and foremost life. And if it's the only thing that I do while I'm here is to preserve life, I will be able to hold my head up and be able to stand in front of my children and say, I've used my talents for something good. I was put on the select panel on infant lives, and I have to say, serving on financial services, it wasn't the natural jump for me. It was really interesting when the previous speaker put me on the select panel. I was trying to figure out what my niche was. We had a lot of attorneys, a lot of doctors, people who are really versed in that area, and I tried to figure out what my position was. And this is a really good lesson to all of the people who are in the audience. You have gifts and you have talents that are not opportunities for to use for the benefit of society, but it's your obligation to do that. And I remember sitting down thinking, as I'm listening to what happens to a person that goes through a Planned Parenthood clinic. And then I started realizing that a 14-year-old, and at that time, my middle child was 14, can actually go into a clinic, agree on her own without the consent of a parent or someone there being an advocate for her to say, I'm going to agree to a major medical procedure, and then I'm also going to agree to give up that child for either selling their parts for research and be able to make that decision. I have to tell you that it is so un-American. We have desensitized our society and desensitized our youth. To think that that same child, our federal government and society says that that child cannot get behind the wheel of a car, cannot register to vote, cannot join the military, can't even go on a field trip without their parents' signature, but yet they can go into a clinic without an advocate there and at the scariest time of their lives and be able to do and consent to these procedures is beyond me. And that's where I felt like my voice came in, because I remembered my 14-year-old daughter and how she can be in that situation. And I think that this is, like I said, one of the reasons why you shouldn't ever let anyone tell you that you are not qualified or you don't have the experience to do something, because we can always find our experience in our life, what our calling is. And I have to say that's something that I will continue. And I know all of these ladies have been steadfast in their fight to protect life. And like I said, you know, if you think about who we are as a society, we as Americans have to be able to stand up and say we are going to protect life at all stages of development, in the schools, on the streets, and in the womb.
Wow. Now, we're gonna call this the lightning round.
Okay.
Why is the empowerment of women vital to the foundation of a free, prosperous, and civil society? Let's start right here.
I think what Mia just was talking about, the importance of life in every life, and it really is a foundation in our founding documents. When you look at the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, that all men and women are created equal. And that's where, and we want life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for everyone. And that's, I think it's just so foundational. And that's what we need to be striving to achieve for everyone, no matter where they come from, no matter their walk of life.
I forgot the question, but that was great.
Why do you think the empowerment of women is important in our society?
Well, it's what we've talked about. Every single issue that we touch upon are women's issues. If you think about this, I remember we are the ones that are taking our kids to and from, whether you have children or not, are going to and from the schools, going to and from the doctor's offices, going into the grocery store, realizing that the prices of goods and services have gone up, gas has gone up, yet our paychecks haven't, except for last month. These are the things that we see, that we deal with. And we also understand that there is a need as partners for men and women to be involved in society. And I just want to make that very clear. I am so grateful that I have a husband that sees the value of women. And all of our husbands are very special people, because they are not threatened at all. And they see they see this as part of their journey through life also, to be able to have our backs and be able to go out and really help us assert and talk, be a voice for America and our children. So I'm really grateful for that.
So I'll just associate myself with the remarks of my colleagues. I'm going to take a different angle here, though. Oftentimes we get asked, what's it like to serve as women in Congress, because particularly as Republican conservative women, there's just not very many of us. We need more, by the way, so we need you. But I was fortunate enough to grow up in a home where my father told me every single day, Martha, you can be anything you want to be. You can be anything you want to be. Like, to the point that my sister and I took it for granted. We kind of roll our eyes like, oh, here he goes again. Now as an adult and a mom, I think how fortunate I was and blessed to have a father that told me every day I could be anything I wanted to be. And I'm here to tell each of you in this room that you can be anything you want to be. And if you need reminding of that, pick up the phone and call me. I will. But what I tell people is when they say, what was it like to run as a woman and, a woman for Congress? I said, it never occurred to me, because my dad told me I could be anything I wanted to be. all of us have gifts and talents that we bring to the table. And I think women having a seat at the table is so important because of all the things that have been expressed here today, because of our experiences, because of our life experiences, because of the role that we play in our families as well. And so I'm going to use this opportunity to say it's not only important, it's imperative. And for those of you that have a 20-year plan or a 30-year plan, that's great. I'm all for setting goals. But keep your eyes wide open because you never know when the opportunity is going to come. For me, I was sitting watching the 10 o'clock news one night with my husband. We didn't have any children. And my predecessor on the city council announced that she was not seeking reelection. I had to go to the probate court the next day to make sure I actually sat in that district. But I had one of those aha moments, one of those moments where my stomach did a flip and I kind of elbowed my husband and I said, I think that's what I'm supposed to do. If we're going to live and work and God willing have children in my hometown of Montgomery, Alabama, I want a seat at the table. And so I was a music major too. I went to law school. Never in my life thought that I would be serving in the United States Congress, but it all started with me hearing that voice and listening. And when you ask for the doors to open, you have to have the courage to walk through them. So I know I can speak for all of these phenomenal women up here. For those of you thinking about entering into public service, call us. We'll encourage you. It's absolutely imperative that we have you.
Absolutely, here, and I'll thanks for teeing it up, Martha, and I'll take a swing at it too. Step off the cliff. That's what my husband said to me when I was there with 3 little kids, chairing a party, running from pillar to post, and a president-elect called and said, "I need a suburban woman from the heartland of America who knows how to win elections to come and help me in Washington, D.C. And I said, can I call you right back? I did what every woman does. I made a list, right, huh? And I called my husband, told me I had to come home, and I needed to talk with him about this, three little kids running around. All this egg, bowling ball, chainsaw, you remember. He sat there patiently as I laid out all 20 reasons why I could not possibly make this work. And he said, step off the cliff. And that's what I would submit to all of you, women and men. If you've got that 20-year plan, tear it up. I had one too. And say yes. Step out of your comfort zone. Step off the cliff, out of the box, whatever idiom you want to put around it. Think big and say yes to opportunities that come your way. And the reason it's important to empower women in society, because I believe society would cease to exist without us. We are, with all due respect, guys, we're the nurturers, we're the caregivers, we're the fixers, we're the doers. Try not to be the complainers, but but we are. You want something to get done, you ask a busy woman, and it gets done. Yeah, life balance is important. We've all raised children and families, served as role models to others, served causes greater than oneself, given voice to the most vulnerable in our society. All of that is so very important, and you can do it. You can do it and have it all, maybe not all at once. Life's about choices, but it's important that our voice is heard and represented at the table. So, and that young women, young and old, are willing to jump into the public arena. We're all here to shape policy, and you don't shape policy unless you've got some level of power, and you don't have that level of power unless you run for office and you're elected to a position where you can make a difference every day. Some elected official is making a decision about the air you breathe, the roads you drive on, the schools you go to, your national defense and safety and security, the power of your paycheck, whether there's any left in it, and at the end of the day, somebody's making a decision at the very grassroots and school board levels all the way up to President of the United States. Be a part of it. Be informed. Be involved, and make a difference. So it's important that we stand up and stick together for all women.
Well, wow, this has been a great panel. I'd love to continue on all afternoon. I have lots more questions, but I know you guys have busy schedules. So let's thank these women warriors for standing up for what's right. Thank you all very much.
Thanks. I love that. Women warriors.